The black SUV rolled to a slow, deliberate stop. A sharp breeze rustled the flags outside Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. Inside, things were quiet. Just another ordinary day, or so it seemed. Then the doors opened. Secret Service agents in suits moved fast, eyes scanning the hospital parking lot. A nurse inside noticed them first. Her hand froze over a clipboard. Others peeked through the blinds. And then they saw him.
Donald J. Trump.
No press vans.
No reporters. No loud announcements.
Just a former U.S. president walking up the steps, alone. Dressed in a dark blue suit, red tie, and holding something small and wrapped in cloth. Even the hospital director didn't know he was coming. It wasn't a publicity stunt. He had told no one, not even his aides, where he was going. As he entered through the side entrance, heads turned. Conversations stopped. Two young Marines in wheelchairs straightened up. One of them whispered, "Is that really him?" It was. But Trump didn't look like the firebrand seen on stages and rallies. He looked reflective, heavy even, like a man carrying something important, something personal. What happened next caught everyone off guard. Once inside, Trump quietly asked the receptionist a question no one expected. "Take me to the ones nobody visits. The ones who've been here longest." The nurse blinked, unsure. He clarified, softer this time, "The long-term wing.
No cameras.
No speech. Just, take me." The nurse nodded and led the way through sterile corridors, past rooms labeled only by numbers and initials. Each door held a different story. Men and women broken in service of something bigger than themselves. Along the way, Trump paused at a memorial wall lined with photos. Faces of soldiers lost in battle, some smiling in uniforms, some barely older than teenagers. He stood there longer than expected, not saying a word, just looking. Then they arrived, Ward C, long-term recovery, a quiet part of the hospital, where the wounded heal slowly and often alone. The first room they entered belonged to Sergeant Eli Martinez, a 27-year-old who lost both legs in Afghanistan. His parents lived states away. Visits were rare. But today the door opened, and in walked a former president.
Eli Frotze.
Trump didn't waste a second. He stepped forward, sat down, looked him in the eye, and said, "You don't know me personally, but I know about you, and I brought something." He pulled out the cloth from his coat pocket. Inside it, a handwritten letter, stained slightly at the edges. He read it aloud. "To the warrior who gave his limbs for liberty, know that your courage fuels a nation, and your pain will never be forgotten." Tears welled in Eli's eyes. He tried to speak but couldn't. Trump stood, placed a hand on his shoulder, and simply said, "You're stronger than most people I've ever met." In the hallway, a young nurse turned away, visibly moved. Room 208 looked like any other. White walls, a small window with a flag outside. But inside lay Captain Henry Dawson, a 92-year-old World War II veteran who had been in and out of hospitals since the 80s. He had no visitors in nearly 2 years. A nurse quietly whispered, "He doesn't talk much, doesn't open his eyes some days." Trump nodded. He walked in slowly, sat at the bedside, and took Henry's frail hand into his own. "Captain Dawson, I'm Donald Trump. I read about what you did in Normandy." There was a long pause, then a slow blink. One eye opened, then the other. Trump smiled and continued. "They told me you stayed behind so your men could make it out. You crawled 2 miles through enemy lines, wounded, just to call in an airstrike that saved dozens. That takes more than courage. That takes something few understand." And then, Trump reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out something he hadn't given to anyone in months. A presidential challenge coin, engraved with the words, "For bravery beyond duty." He placed it in Henry's hand. Gently, reverently. "This coin isn't from me," Trump whispered. "It's from every soldier who lived because you didn't give up." Captain Dawson smiled, just slightly. His fingers curled around the coin. And for the first time in weeks, he whispered, "Thank you, son." Outside the room, silence. Then a quiet sob from one of the hospital staff. In one room, A new patient had just arrived. Private First Class Jordan Hill, 19 years old, had returned from Syria after losing most of his hearing and partial mobility. He couldn't speak. A tube in his throat made sure of that. But he could write. On his bedside table was a leather-bound journal. Trump stepped in, nodded to the nurse, and gently picked it up. He asked, "May I?" Jordan blinked once. His way of saying yes. Trump flipped through the pages, many marked with dates, some with sketches of battle zones, some filled with motivational quotes. But one entry stopped him cold. It read, "I may never walk again. I may never speak again. But I'd still serve again. Because I love this flag more than I love my own comfort." Trump swallowed. You could see the emotion rising in his chest. He looked at Jordan, leaned close, and said, "That's more powerful than any speech I've ever given." And then, something happened. Trump stood up, straightened his shoulders, looked directly at Jordan, and gave a full military salute. Every nurse and aide in the hallway stopped, watched, and felt something they hadn't felt in a long time: respect being returned. Donald Trump didn't stay long after that. He refused any food, took no interviews, shook a few hands of staff members and thanked them for their service. On the way out, he passed a bulletin board filled with handwritten letters from kids to the soldiers. One stood out, a crayon drawing of a soldier with a cape. The child had written, "You're all heroes, like Batman but better." Trump smiled at that, took the drawing off the wall, folded it gently, and put it in his coat pocket. As he reached the hospital doors, he turned one last time to the nurse who had guided him. "Promise me something," he said. "Yes, sir." "Remind them often that this country hasn't forgotten, that what they did matters." She nodded, holding back tears. He walked out slowly.
No microphones.
No media, just a quiet wind, a waving flag, and a president who came not to speak, but to listen, to honor, and to remind everyone that behind every uniform is a heart that still beats with sacrifice. And on that day, Donald Trump didn't make a speech. He made history in the silence.